Hello and welcome everyone. On May 6, 2010, at 2:42 p.m. local time, the Dow Jones Stock Index lost nearly 1,000 points in just a few minutes, experiencing a dizzying drop of 9.2%. During this very short period, Wall Street lost a little over $1 trillion, and in a context already undermined by the Greek economic crisis, some saw it as a replay of the infamous Black Thursday of 1929. Fortunately, that was not the case. And despite this more than spectacular collapse, the Dow Jones managed to stabilize the stock market before the end of the day. However, the $1 trillion were irreversibly lost during this lightning crash, which lasted only a few tens of minutes at most. Several investigations were then conducted to determine the causes that led to this stock market catastrophe, as human error was not ruled out. But in reality, no one could have suspected that the author of this flash crash was just a young man with autism, still living with his parents, and spending all his time playing video games. Navinder Singh Sarao was indeed found guilty by the American justice system of being the mastermind behind this stock market disaster through clearly unlawful methods. But by what extraordinary means could a young trader play tricks on the big shots of Wall Street and rake in millions of dollars from his humble room in the London suburbs? Well, that's what we're going to explore today in this exciting video, so settle in comfortably and dim the lights because we're starting right away. And if you enjoy content like this, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on all notifications so you don't miss our upcoming video. Wall Street will never forget the Thursday of May 6, 2010, a day that had started quite normally in New York, with its usual traffic jams, honking horns, and the constant hustle and bustle of traders. At the time when the city was still waking up, the New York Stock Exchange, the world's largest stock exchange, was already in full swing. Buy and sell orders were booming, and millions of shares were exchanged every moment, generating massive financial transactions along the way. Everything seemed to be going well, and no one could have predicted the catastrophic events that would unfold, even with the best crystal ball. At exactly 2:42 p.m., screens went haywire, and bewildered traders looked at each other with completely astonished expressions. Before their eyes, widened with shock, the Dow Jones Industrial Average literally began a free fall. In less than 10 minutes, the Dow Jones experienced a historic drop of 9.2%, a precedent that had never been seen before and hinted at nothing less than a global economic catastrophe. The context was indeed ripe for disaster, as the severe economic crisis that had been plaguing Greece since 2008 threatened to spread throughout the European Union. In the excitement of the moment, this spectacular and terrifying drop in the Dow Jones was wrongly attributed to a reaction to Greece's sovereign debt. The priority was to salvage what could be salvaged, and it was crucial to halt this index collapse as soon as possible, as the consequences were going to be extremely serious. Tens of thousands of trades had been executed, and an incalculable number of shares had been bought or sold at prices higher or lower than 60% of their values just moments earlier. Therefore, the Nasdaq and the New York Stock Exchange decided to exceptionally cancel some securities trades that took place between 2:40 p.m. and 3 p.m., but not all of them. The result? $1 trillion had just disappeared from the face of the earth, and hundreds of companies had to bear the brunt of their losses. The dizzying fall indeed stopped at 3 p.m., but the Dow Jones Index, which had opened the session at 10,862.22 points, closed at 10,520.32 points, with a difference of 341.9 points. It was significant, and the financial losses were enormous, but it could have been much worse, potentially leading to a scenario similar to the fateful Black Thursday of 1929. However, a staggering $1 trillion had vanished from the screens, and it was necessary to find someone to blame for this economic turmoil. Initially, there was speculation that the Greek crisis had finally caught up with the European Union, and consequently, the American stock markets, causing their indices to melt like snow in the sun. But the hypothesis of human error was the most plausible at the time, as everyone on Wall Street knew about the fat finger and the damage it could cause. This term, literally translating to a big finger, refers to a typing error by a human operator who would have entered an amount significantly higher than intended. It was then suspected that a Procter & Gamble trader had entered a sell order for billions instead of millions. An enormous difference that would have caused Procter & Gamble's stock price to plummet by over 37%. So, it was concluded that the American bank Citigroup was responsible for this input error through one of its inexperienced or distracted young traders. However, like other participants in the New York stock market, the bank had already conducted thorough analyses of its accounts and the values traded that day and found nothing suspicious. Apparently, there had been no errors on the part of its traders, so the blame had to be sought elsewhere because the bank could not and should not be incriminated. Investigators then turned their attention to the firm Waddell & Reed, a seemingly ordinary asset management company based in Overland Park, Kansas. It was discovered that the firm had issued a sell order for 75,000 E-mini S&P 500 futures contracts that day, using a high-frequency trading system. Both investigative bodies, the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, CFTC, therefore concluded that it was precisely this sale that had triggered the Dow Jones flash crash. The SEC and the CFTC then issued an official report outlining the events of that fateful day, placing them in context. On Thursday, May 6th, the stock market was already fragile and fragmented, and it would have taken just one significant transaction to trigger a global collapse. That significant transaction, indeed, was the sale of a very large quantity of E-mini S&P 500 futures contracts, so large that it completely exhausted available buyers. However, since it was an algorithmic machine, not human traders, high-frequency transactions continued to sell aggressively, thereby accelerating the mutual fund's selling effect and inevitably contributing to the sharp drop in value. The SEC's 100-page report attributed the flash crash on Thursday, May 6, 2010, to the logarithmic high-frequency trading system, which, unlike human traders, did not know when to stop once initiated. Nevertheless, 5 years after this flash crash, the US Department of Justice identified Navinder Singh Sarao, a young British trader, as the primary instigator of the Dow Jones collapse. A face had finally been put behind the flash crash, and Navinder Sarao was charged with 22 counts, including electronic fraud, market manipulation, and spoofing. Spoofing, in case you're not familiar, is a market manipulation technique that involves offering securities for sale or purchase with the intention of cancelling the order just before it is executed, aiming to achieve a favorable price movement. Navinder Sarao is said to have offered for sale E-mini S&P futures contracts on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, with a value of approximately $200 million, before cancelling them at the last second. In just a few minutes, the young trader modified or replaced his orders 19,000 times, placing a staggering 62,000 of these contracts, totaling $3.5 billion. This action caused the dizzying fall of stocks and the stock index, and Navinder had to answer for it before the magistrates. The US justice system ordered the arrest and extradition of this young man, who everyone already saw as the new Wolf of Wall Street. Despite the perception, Navinder Sarao was far from the archetype of the ambitious young hotshot, as even though he earned several $1 million through his stock market manipulations, he led a rather low-key lifestyle. The 32-year-old, diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, continued to live in his parents' house in the London suburbs, despite his millionaire status. The only significant purchase he allowed himself was an old used Volkswagen, which cost no more than $5,000. He was a reserved young man who preferred milk to beer and never went out to clubs or for a night on the town. His former colleagues remember him as a solitary and somewhat introverted young trader, but one with an exceptional memory and a particular talent for taking risks in trading. He could spend more than 48 hours in front of his computer screens, monitoring market trends and prices, studying statistics, and making countless calculations. Navinder Sarao was unquestionably a very skilled trader, and through conventional trading methods, he had amassed a considerable fortune. He later reinvested this money in his own trading company, engaging in algorithmic trading through a highly efficient software program. His primary strategy was to flood the market with buy or sell orders before quickly cancelling them, known as spoofing. Navinder Sarao made millions using this technique, and on the infamous Grey Thursday of May 6, 2010, he earned just under $1 million in a single day. He continued to make a significant amount of money until 2015, the year of his arrest by the London police. Extradited to the United States, the young man faced a potential sentence of over 380 years in total if found guilty. In a country where justice is not lenient with sentences, Navinder Sarao seemed to be in serious trouble. Surprisingly, the US Department of Justice decided to show great leniency towards him, and Navinder received only a year of home confinement, the lightest sentence possible. Since then, the young man who lost all his millions has returned to square one, occupying the squalid room in his parents' apartment.